Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qizhi. Coming up in this edition, German voters will head to the polls in February after Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote in Parliament. South Korea's Constitutional Court has set a Monday deadline for President Yoon Suk-yeol to submit a written argument for his impeachment trial. And Cyclone Chido has killed several people in Mozambique after causing heavy losses in French overseas territory of Mayotte. We begin in Europe. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his minority government has lost a confidence vote in Parliament. Scholz caught the vote after his coalition government collapsed last month. His loss paves the way for snap elections in February. The political mess in Germany comes as Europe's largest economy is facing other challenges as well. Peter Oliver tells us about the political and economic situation there.
We all know where we will be on the 23rd of February, or at least I know where I'll be. I'll be here in the government district in Berlin covering the results of the latest federal election. It has come early and it's come about because a vote of confidence in his minority government called by Olaf Scholz has been lost. You say lost. When he addressed the Bundestag, he said he wanted an election. He wanted it to go to the people, that they could decide who was going to run them. 207 of those MPs voted in favour of Olaf Scholz, 394 against, with 116 abstentions. In the speech that Olaf Scholz gave, he used 5 minutes to absolutely eviscerate his former finance minister, Christian Lindner, who he sacked, which ultimately led to the Free Democratic Party pulling out of the coalition and where we are right now. He said Lindner wasn't mature enough for government. Lindner did hit back and said that his criticism of Scholz's policies was to protect the financial future of German citizens. But Scholz also went on to say, basically, trust in me. He went on in full campaign mode, saying he was the right person to lower energy prices. He was the right person to turn Germany's flagging economy around. He was the right person to deal with Donald Trump, and he was the right man for Germany when it came to defence.
Today, a highly armed nuclear power is waging war in Europe, just a 2-hour flight from here. We must invest massively in our security and defence to meet these challenges. Today we are confronted with a serious economic upheavals, energy crisis, isolationism, unfair competition. This is hitting our globally networked economy harder than others.
If we go from what the Bundesbank, the German federal bank, issued a statement on Friday last week in which they said essentially 2025 spells trouble for the German economy. The predicted growth is around 0.2%. We've got unemployment at 6.1% here in Germany. That's the highest it's been in 4 years. Out of the major German manufacturers, 4 out of 10, that were polled, said they expected to make some form of layoff in the next 12 months or so. One of the biggest that is involved in potential layoffs is Volkswagen. They're currently locked in discussions with the unions because VW say if they're to survive as a company, they need to close plants in Germany and get staff to take a 10% wage reduction. Something that the Chancellor Scholz pointed out in his speech to Parliament, and the reason we're talking about Donald Trump here is because the tariffs that Donald Trump wants to impose have a particularly large impact upon an export economy like Germany. In fact, the Bundesbank predicting that if Trump follows through on every tariff he's talked about, it could cost the German GDP 1.4%. That's just from what Donald Trump could do. So whoever does become Chancellor following the 23rd of February elections, there's an awful lot for them to try and turn around, particularly economically.
That was Peter Oliver in Berlin. In Asia, local media say South Korean investigators have raided President Yoon Suk-yeol's security servers in an attempt to obtain phone call records. The Constitutional Court has asked Yoon to submit a written argument for his impeachment trial by Monday. More details from Jack Barton in Seoul.
Quite a few things happening over the next few days. One is that letter that the Constitutional Court wants President Yoon to fill out. There are actually a series of documents, one informing Yoon that the Constitutional Court has received the impeachment vote from the National Assembly and will proceed with its investigation. The other asking Yoon to fill out a series of answers and submit it by next Monday. The presiding judge has now been chosen, Justice Chung Hyung-sik, He is a conservative. He was appointed by Yoon about 1 year ago. All of this has to play out, plus the dual investigations, one by the prosecutor's office, which has asked Yoon to volunteer for questioning before next Monday, before it begins considering an arrest warrant, so to forcibly question him. And of course the joint investigation between the police, the Defence Ministry and the Corruption Investigation Office for senior officials, and they are asking Yoon to come in on Wednesday to voluntarily submit to questioning. Again, if that doesn't happen, they may choose to apply for a warrant for Yoon's arrest. And important to point out, these are sort of separate tracks. So you've got the impeachment track going through the Constitutional Court, and the investigations by the prosecutor's office and the joint investigation, they are whether it amounted to insurrection and abuse of power, that very brief declaration of martial law. And they are very serious, because if he is found guilty, that comes with a potential death sentence or a life sentence with or without hard labour. And so Yoon at the moment fighting all three of these cases with this pressure mounting on him and the threat of arrest. It is possible that this week he may voluntarily go in for questioning. If he does it with the prosecutor's office, he will be the first ever sitting president to do so.
That was Jack Barton on legal issues facing South Korea's president. The United Nations Special Envoy has discussed the transition in Syria with the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which now leads an interim government following the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad. Guy Peterson's office says the envoy told Syrian leaders that the UN plans to offer all kinds of help to the people. Peterson also urged an inclusive transition based on a 9-year-old Security Council resolution. The General Command in Syria said Resolution 2254 needs an update to suit the new reality. Haida Kazwini reports from Damascus.
This is the second visit by the UN envoy to Syria in less than 1 month. He visited Syria on 20th of November last month, and he met with the former officials of the Syrian government about the sticking of the Constitutional Committee, which has achieved no progress in years. And at the end of his visiting, he said that he warned against the risk of re-escalation in Syria. Now the envoy found himself necessary now to come to Damascus again to be in touch with the new de facto government. He met with the head of the Syrian administration, Ahmed al-Shara, and the interim prime minister, Mohammed al-Bashir. And at the end of the meeting, he said something that the only solution for the Syrian crisis is the inclusive Syrian-led political process based on the UN Resolution 2254. But actually the reaction from the head of the Syrian administration said that this resolution is no longer valid now, because one of the parties which included this process, who was the former Syrian government, is now down. It's not here. But it looks that the UN envoy wants to continue the process of achieving this political process. He also stated something that the government should now start providing services to the Syrians, and he spoke about sanctions. He said that sanctions are put by the United States and the EU Union only, by those countries, not by the United Nations. So if the interim government wants these sanctions to be lifted, then it has to enhance its relations with those countries.
That was Haida Kazwini on discussions about the future in Syria. Meanwhile, former President Bashar al-Assad has released his first statement since he left Syria for Russia, saying his departure wasn't planned and did not occur in the final moments of fighting, as some people claimed. Assad said Russia requested the evacuation after Damascus fell to the opposition. He expressed his trust in the Syrian people to protect their country. Turning to Africa now, Cyclone Chido has killed at least 3 people and injured dozens in Mozambique. Authorities say it has weakened to a tropical storm, but still flattened several houses in the country on Africa's southeastern coast. Chido landed in northern Mozambique after pummeling the Mayotte archipelago in the Indian Ocean. Damage to infrastructure on the French territory has posed challenges to the arrival of rescuers and the delivery of aid. Caroline B. reports.
Cyclone Chido slammed into Mayotte early on Saturday. It was the strongest storm to hit the island in over 90 years, and its arrival brought widespread devastation. Rescue teams and supplies are being rushed in by air and sea, but efforts are likely to be hindered by damage to airports and electricity distribution.
Right now, we are encountering a number of difficulties in transporting all the staff and equipment needed for the victim rescue mission on the island of Mayotte. So here, if you like, there is a sort of cluster log that's being organized to bring together the men and equipment. And then, depending on the need and the capacity of Mayotte Airport, we can use air bridges to transport the right equipment and the right people for the mission.
A fast aid plane landed in Mayotte with 3 tons of medical supplies, blood for transfusions, and 17 medical staff. 2 military aircrafts were expected to follow. A Navy patrol ship was also to depart from Reunion Island, another French overseas territory, with emergency personnel and equipment. Authorities are warning that the death toll could be as high as hundreds or even several thousands. They added it would be difficult to reach a final count. Most of the residents on the island are Muslims who traditionally bury their dead within 24 hours. Cyclone Chido caused utter devastation. Homes were reduced to rubble, trees uprooted, and electricity poles destroyed, hampering information.
An extremely chaotic situation, immense destruction, and authorities who are working to restore or maintain public order and ensure supplies, the return of running water, supplies, and then, in a second phase, reconstruction.
Mayotte, located 8,000 kilometers from Paris, is one of France's poorest territories, with more than 100,000 undocumented migrants, according to the French Interior Ministry. The archipelago is a focal point for migration from Comoros, where thousands arrive in search of better living conditions.
That was Caroline B. on the impact of Cyclone Chido in Southeast Africa. Finally, in North America, a 15-year-old girl has opened fire at a school in Wisconsin, killing 2 people and injuring 6 others. The shooter also died after police found her with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. U.S. authorities say President Joe Biden has been briefed and White House officials will offer support. Dan Williams has details.
This is another shocking event that's taken place here, in Madison, Wisconsin. The shooter, we understand it, she was a student at the school, and then, of course, the other victims, a teenager and a teacher. There are 6 people as well that were injured. 2, we understand, have life-threatening injuries. Now, this attack began shortly after 10:57 local time. Happened here at the Abundant Life Christian School. It's a K-12 school. That means it's from kindergarten all the way through high school. In terms of a motive, that remains unclear. We understand that the shooter was found dead in one of the school buildings. Sean F. Barnes, who's the Madison Chief of Police, he spoke to media. This is what he had to say.
Today truly is a sad day for Madison and for our country. It is a day that I believe will live in our collective minds for a very, very long time. I think we can all agree that enough is enough, and we have to come together to do everything we can to support our students.
This is actually the 83rd shooting at a school in the U.S. this year. Obviously, it's been a very long day. These students have been at the school since this shooting occurred. Now, there will also be a candlelight vigil that will take place at Wisconsin's state capitol here in Madison on Tuesday evening. This is, no doubt, a community in shock. And a little earlier, we heard from Bethany Hyman. Now, she has a daughter who attends this school. This is how she summed up her feelings.
I bring my daughter to school knowing well that this happens in the world, that people are struggling, and I pray for my daughter's safety.
The healing process for all those concerned, for this community, well, that now is just beginning.
That was Dan Williams on the deadly shooting in Wisconsin. Recapping the headlines before we go, German voters will head to the polls in February after Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote in Parliament. South Korea's Constitutional Court has set a Monday deadline for President Yoon Suk-yeol to submit a written argument for his impeachment trial. And Cyclone Chido has killed several people in Mozambique. after causing heavy losses in the French overseas territory of Mayotte. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qizhi. Thanks for listening.